buckle up, everybody. Refill your coffee, or if you're listening to this at night, maybe a stiff drink or something. But if you use X, formerly Twitter, and you follow certain technology leaders there, you may have noticed that some of them share a weird kind of short series of letters that are listed in their bios. So you'll regularly see these letters E/ACC in the profile title of users, and it often follows their name. So, Paul Roetzer, parentheses E/ACC. That's not your profile, but
And I do
that's what
not have that in my
that's what it would
Twitter.
look like. So you'll see this more and more, and it actually stands for a term called, quote, effective accelerationism. Now, this is a philosophy, and maybe you might even call it a movement
Or
that
a cult.
or a cult, we'll get to that part for sure, that more and more influential people in AI and technology and Silicon Valley specifically have started to subscribe to. Now, this movement broadly believes that the best thing for humanity is to advance artificial intelligence as quickly as possible. And the movement serves as kind of a counterweight to all these voices in AI that believe more regulations, laws, guardrails around AI are needed to actually use the technology safely. So we're seeing a lot of major players in Silicon Valley and in AI at large, including people like the famous venture capitalist Mark Andreessen, identify as EAC, is how we're going to refer to it throughout the rest of this segment. E/ACC, EAC. So it's important to really understand a bit about this. It may seem a little weird at first, but it really, really is integral, we think, to getting inside the head of some of the people that are defining AI in 2024 and beyond. So, Paul, at first glance, this is kind of some weird sci-fi techno cult sounding type thing that probably your average person is not going to think super relevant to them. But it actually has some really practical implications, I think, for everyone trying to understand and adopt AI. So could you maybe unpack this for us and tell us kind of why it matters?
Yeah. So as Mike said, this one is it definitely has a little sci-fi out there feel, but it is very important because there are very influential people in technology who believe this all to be true. Uh, so I will say we are presenting this as not like there's elements of this I totally understand. Like I sympathize with elements of their thinking. Um, I would not consider myself EAC is actually like how you pronounce E dash / ACC. I'm certainly not EAC. But this is definitely the accelerationist side. This is the technology at all costs movement. So I've been aware of it for a while. I don't know how long. I've kind of generally known, but more just like seen the EAC symbol on people's Twitter accounts and been kind of annoyed by it. At first, I probably thought it was like a crypto thing,
Mm.
and so I just ignored it, like I ignored most crypto stuff for a couple years. But um, so I listen though to Lex Friedman. So last week I'm listening to the Lex Friedman podcast, and it's with this guy Guillaume Verdun. Um, and so he tells the story of how he created this movement. So basically, the creator of EAC is an alternate persona on Twitter known as Beth Bezos. So Jeff Bezos switched over. So the Twitter handle is actually based Beth Bezos. So there's a few things already where I'm just like, hey, this is not my thing. This is again why I haven't really dove into this previously. Um, it sounded political and it sounded like all this other stuff. So I was just kind of ignoring it. But once I listened to this podcast, I realized like, oh, that was my bad. Like I shouldn't have been not paying closer attention to this. So he creates this alternate persona. This is not known to the world. Beth Bezos was an unknown person. It's kind of like the guy who created Bitcoin. Like we still don't know who that guy is.
Yeah, yeah,
He's just like a
yeah.
pseudonym, basically. So it's like that. We didn't know who Beth Bezos was. It wasn't a real person in our knowledge. So the movement itself looks like it originated around summer 2022. So it's about a year and a half old. The reason he did the interview and explained this all is because he called it doxed. I don't think that's technically what happened. Doxing is like someone's private information or location. He was more technically probably unmasked. Forbes did an expose where they basically tried to figure out who Jeff Bezos was because he was starting to have influence over Silicon Valley and the future of AI and technology. And so they made the argument that because he was over 50,000 followers on Twitter, it was for public good, basically, that people know who he is. So Forbes contacted his investors in, I assume, a kind of November timeframe last year, and alerted them that they knew it was Guillaume and that they were going to publish an article stating as much. And so Guillaume begrudgingly did an interview with Forbes that came out December 1st last year and explained this whole movement and said, yes, in fact, it's me. Now, if you listen to the Lex Fridman podcast, he's still pissed that Forbes did this. Like he didn't think that journalists were allowed to do something like this, so he wasn't happy about it. But in the interview with Friedman, and to a degree the Forbes article, he explains. And now again, Guillaume is a quantum physicist, just a genius guy who spent his early career studying black holes and information theory, like really crazy stuff. Crazy awesome stuff. He worked on the quantum team at Google, building quantum computers. And he basically left to start a company called Extropic because he believes that there are limitations to the current pursuit of quantum computing. And he's trying to build a thermodynamics based computer. I am not going to get into all of like that stuff,
Yeah,
but go
don't
read
worry.
about it.
Stick with us.
Yeah,
Listen.
we're going to get there. So he leaves, starts in Extropic, creates this EAC movement, and he explains how they engineered the movement to spread like a virus. So if you're a marketer, like my ears kind of perked up. I was like, you did what? Like, how does that work? And they, in essence, realized that memes are treated favorably by Twitter's algorithms, and that if they built the movement around memes, it would spread like a virus online. And that's what they did. So that's how they kind of created this whole thing. So what is EAC? Now we kind of get into the meat of this. And again, bear with us. It's a little out there, but it's really important. So we went and pulled the original post that they put up about effective accelerationism. As Mike said, that's what EAC means. It does play off of effective altruism, which they hate because they feel it was a bunch of rich people who found ways to funnel money through nonprofits and steal the money, basically. So they're not fans of effective altruism, but they did play off of it to do effective accelerationism. So they state in their initial post, the overarching goal for humanity is to preserve the light of consciousness. It gets more intense. Second, technology and market forces, as they define as techno-capital, which I'll get to in a moment, are accelerating in their powers and abilities. So techno-capital is a really important term to understand here because they use it all the time. And I had no idea what it meant. So I actually went to Grok. I figured, well, this might be actually a pretty good use case for Grok. So I said, what is techno-capital in terms of the EAC movement? At first it said it couldn't tell me, that it was just, in development, and I go search on the internet basically. And I asked it again and then it told me. I don't know why that is. So it said, techno-capital refers to the economic and social power associated with technology innovation and corporate sectors. It's a term that highlights the importance of technology and the impact on the development of capitalism. Some people believe that techno-capital is driving force behind the evolution of society, while others see it as a tool for corporate control and domination. Regardless, it's undeniable that technology, so it's basically technology and capital. Now, I'm going to read you ChatGPT's output as well, because it actually gives like some really good, interesting context. So ChatGPT says, in the context of accelerationism movement, particularly the branch known as EAC, it refers to the concept that blends technology and capitalism. Accelerationism is an intellectual and political movement that holds the process of capitalist, technology, and social change should be accelerated rather than resisted or controlled. This gets into what Mike was saying. They don't like laws and regulations. They just want accelerated at all costs. In this framework, techno-capital is seen as a driving force of societal evolution. It represents the idea that the advancements of technology, like AI and quantum computing, under the dynamics of capitalism, leads to an exponential increase in technological growth and societal transformation. This concept suggests that the infusion of technology and capital creates self-propelling systems that move towards ever greater levels of complexity and integration. So basically, blah, blah, blah. Okay, then going back to their notes, they say technology market forces, techno capital, are accelerating in their powers and abilities. This force cannot be stopped. Techno capital can usher in the next evolution of consciousness, creating unthinkable next generation life forms and silicon based awareness. I'm going to linger there for a moment. Next generation life forms means, by definition, likely not purely human. And silicon based awareness means the chips themselves become aware of themselves, the AI becomes aware of itself, basically. These new forms of consciousness, by definition, will make sentience more varied and durable. We want this, they say. Those who are first to usher in and control techno capital have immense agency over future consciousness. Humans have this agency right now, and they can affect what happens. And it's basically a set of ideas and practices that seek to maximize the probability of this happening. So, my take to kind of summarize this is accelerate AI at all costs, regardless of the implications, the negatives. No regulation of companies building the technology. Technological advancements solve everything. They are of the belief that you cannot allow a few AI companies like Meta, Google, OpenAI to capture all the value and control the laws and regulations. What we've talked previously about regulatory capture, that OpenAI and Google are like saying, hey, regulate us. These guys are saying no regulation. Do not allow that because they're just going to control everything. They believe that safe AI comes from market choice. So this was the one that I was really listening for when I was listening to this, because I still am unsure about the open source movement for these large language models because they have no guardrails. Anything can be done with them. Their belief is, and this gets into the techno capitalist thing, that capitalism decides what wins and what loses. That even if bad actors use LLMs to do bad things, capitalism is the guardrail, that there is no incentive for those companies over time or those individuals over time if no one buys what they're creating. So they believe that capitalism rewards the winners and extinguishes the losers that don't create value and align with societal values and norms. In essence, they let the market decide. Um, and then the last thing is humans are likely not the ultimate form of intelligence, and to them, that's okay. We should accelerate, even if it means obsoleting ourselves in our current form. And even said at one point, like, we owe it to whatever the future of humanity looks like, the trillions of people to come, that if we're not the ultimate life form, we do everything we can to create a more intelligent life form that can make us interplanetary and do all this stuff. So again, as we warned you, this is really sci-fi and kind of crazy sounding. But why it matters, going back to what Mike said at the beginning, there are people building AI and running some of these AI companies who believe this stuff. Um, and that affects all of us. So we have to understand their beliefs and motivations, the tools that they're building, the computers that they're building in the near term will impact our careers and companies. But the beliefs they hold and their ability to bring those beliefs to life through movements and, as they call them, mind viruses, will impact humanity in like the coming decade. This isn't 30 years out stuff. Like, this is the stuff that they think is like within reach. So I'll stop there. I know it's a lot to process, and Mike, maybe we can kind of unpack it a little bit. But again, like, it's we try and sometimes push a little bit in this podcast to like challenge ourselves and others to expand your understanding of what's going on, because it matters long term, but in a lot of cases, it matters in the very near term around the decisions you make, the companies and vendors you choose to work with. Like, understand what these CEOs believe and why they're building the companies they're building. It's not to write your emails. Like,
Mm.
that's not why most of these companies exist.
So to kind of really quickly summarize these steps, we have this anonymous Twitter X account that's promoting what sound like some crazy views under this EAC moniker, it gets enough attention that eventually journalists start looking into, oh my gosh, what is this random account that all these influential people in Silicon Valley are following? They're able to unmask the account. It turns out to be a Silicon Valley, essentially tech guy who has a very deep physics background. He believes this extreme accelerationist philosophy, which was essentially started by engineering a viral online movement to promote it. And a core of this philosophy is the idea that advancements of technology under capitalism equals growth slash transformation slash where we have to go as a species. And this cannot be stopped. And it may mean that machines end up subsuming humans as the most intelligent life form. Now, that does sound
Sounds like a
wild to
movie plot, doesn't it?
I think it is, honestly. It's some of the movies
The way
I've
you
read.
just summarized that, I'm like, that's a good trailer for a movie.
Yeah, yeah. So, what strikes me is if we took this out of into any other context, and I said to you, "Hey, 7 out of the 10 biggest leaders in AI believe in economic growth at all costs or believe in philanthropy over profits," you would pay attention, wouldn't you? You would say, that's really interesting. That's a big majority of people believe this kind of thing that likely motivates their decisions, why they work on things, why they do what they do. So I think that to me is really the key takeaway here is understanding this in the sense that it motivates more people than you might think. We don't know for sure. Thankfully, some of them put it in their bio. So if you go search for that, you can find them. But I would be willing to bet a significant portion of AI leaders hold some or all of these views. Would you agree with that statement?
I certainly some of them, and I think, even like a Sam Altman, they'll use as an example, like, he actually tweeted at Beth Bezos one time, "You can't out accelerate me." And yet Sam is also the guy fighting for regulation. Elon Musk claims that he started OpenAI because Larry Page was anti-humans. That he felt that if AI took over, that was inevitable. So he created OpenAI to combat this exact concept. And yet Elon Musk owns Neuralink, which merges human minds with computers. Like, so yeah, it's fundamental. And what the other thing, and maybe we'll kind of like move on from here because I think this is just a lot to process. There are what they call forks off of this. So what you're going to see is other E slash
Mm,
other letters, because what's happening is people are like, yeah, I totally actually agree that technology and capitalism will drive this, but I'm not in with the let's replace humans thing. So I'm going to like create a fork or a different variation of this movement that believes this. And they actually encourage that. So they're kind of pushing the most extreme beliefs. And then off of that, they encourage these forks where people, kind of find their own comfort level with what they're going to push. And I think that's probably the thing that ends up being the greatest impact is there's going to be all these forks of these other AI leaders who maybe don't want to publicly say, yeah, I'm cool if humans aren't the thing 50 years from now. They're never going to publicly say that, but
mm.
they may have some varying beliefs, but you're going to start to see the common threads between these people.